Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So we started with the female reproductive system, correct? Okay, good.
Yes.
So okay, let's start with a brief recap like we always do. So Hiba, would you like to start today? I think Atif did the last time. Are you there, Hiba? Is my voice audible to you? Hiba. Hiba, are you there? I don't think if Hiba is able to respond. I don't know. Just one moment, let others also join. Good evening, Hanifa.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, am I audible to you clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, Hanifa, would you like to give me a brief recap of the last class, starting with the female reproductive system?
I couldn't attend the last class because I had Wi-Fi issue.
You did not attend the last class? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, then you need a recap. Then I think we have to go back to Atif. Atif, so sorry, but it's you.
1 minute.
Yes, please. So Hanifa, we have started with the female reproductive system in the last class only. And before that, we finished the male system where you were there, right? You were present in
Yes,
that
sir.
class. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So with the female reproductive system, we have just started the basic and the foundation and the regulation part of it. Today, we will go into details of structures like ovaries, like organs and their functions. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Just waiting for Atif to.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Atif. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. So we started by learning that there are two types of animals: oviparous animals and viviparous animals. Oviparous animals lay eggs, for example, birds, reptiles, and such, and viviparous give live birth, for example, like mammals. So we also know that human embryos have amniotic fluid around them, and that in a human embryo, almost all the vital organs are formed at the end of the first trimester, that is the first 3 months of pregnancy. Then we also know that the heart is the first organ to function during pregnancy after the 22nd day of implantation.
Yes.
Then we also learn the secondary sex characteristics of females, which include high pitched voice, broader waist, development of mammary glands, increased height, fat division, pubic hair, etc. And then
we also did a question: why do females develop a broader waist during puberty, right?
Yes, sir.
What was the reason?
Yeah, so females develop a broader waist at puberty because the bones in a female, they're not permanently fused together and they stretch out during the childbirth.
Yes, so that broader girdle is required during childbirth. That is, so there is something in science known as cause and like event. So something causes something to happen, right? So the need of the child coming out of that female girdle causes that hip girdle or the hip bones to not fuse permanently. Okay, so if you fuse that permanently, then basically you have to break it. The bones has to break apart when the child will take birth. So to avoid that, you need not to fuse it. Just keep it together with cartilage and ligaments, which can easily break down, and it will not be as difficult as to break a bone, right? So that's why they have a loose junction, and also they have a broader hip girdle. Is it clear to you, Hanifa?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and then we discuss puberty, which Atif has already told about. Yes, Atif, continue. Atif,
Okay. When we learned about the ovaries in female, we learned that from the starting of menstrual cycle, that is menarche, each ovary releases ovum in an alternate manner.
yeah,
So
alternate
from
months.
this we can calculate. Yes, sir, we can go.
Yes, should I take over?
Sir, were you going to say something?
No, I was saying in alternate month, right? Yes.
Okay, so okay, I'll continue. Then yeah, from this we can calculate that each ovary releases about 240 to 250 oocytes.
Yes.
But we found out that each ovary produces around couple million primary oocytes before getting arrested in meiosis one. So, and then once it is arrested, many of the ovaries degenerate, and then each ovary contains around 60,000 to 80,000 oocytes after birth.
Yes, right. That's it. So I'll take the regulation part. Thank you, Atif. Okay, Hanifa. So did you understand this part? Basically, it was one question that we prepared for. So just I'll just explain a little bit for you. So we know that puberty starts at the age of 11 to 13 in females. Okay, so let's assume we take it 11 years as the lowest, and reproductive phase ends at menopause, which is around 45 to 50. So let's take the upper limit, which is 50. So the maximum time possible for which a female can stay in reproductive phase is around 40 years, right? At max.
Yes.
More than that, it's not possible. And this is also when we are not counting in any pregnancy or any loss of months because of that. So even if, let's say, 40 years a female stays reproductively viable, in that 40 year, each ovary releases oocyte in an alternate manner. So if starting from the first year, if in January left ovary released, then in February the right ovary will release. So according to this, how many oocytes will be released by each ovary in 1 year? If it is alternate months, how many total months are there in 1 year?
12.
12. And if each ovary releases alternate, then how many times one ovary will release? Left ovary, let's say.
Left one, 6.
6, right?
Yeah.
So each ovary releases 6 times during a year, and 6 ovums, right? If normally it is just secreting 1 ovum, which is the case in humans, so only 6 ovums are secreted. So in 40 years, how many total ovums or oocytes will be secreted by each ovary? Around 240, at max 250, right? Not more than that. But we discussed that during the embryonic stages where the oogenesis starts, remember, each ovary produces around a couple of millions of primary oocytes. So it's like in millions to begin with, where you only need 240 or 250. Then why are you making millions of them? So which gets arrested at meiosis 1, and then the child takes birth, the female child takes birth, and after the birth, it starts decreasing. So the millions of oocytes, they start dying out, and that period in which they are dying out rapidly is called atresia. Okay.
Okay.
So they die. You can just add one thing here, both of you. So write down the period in which the primary oocytes rapidly degenerate. Before birth, the period at which primary oocytes rapidly degenerate. So first they make a couple of millions through divisions, and then they start degrading it, and before birth is known as atresia. Just one second. Atresia. 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 Okay. Then the child is born, and after the birth, each ovary contains around 60,000 to 80,000 oocytes. This is still way more. So in the last class, there was this question that come up, which we discussed, that does the menopause happens because the ovaries are out of ovules? which is clearly not the case, right? Because each ovary has around 60,000 to 80,000 oocytes, right? So they can never get out of oocytes or ovums. Sorry, I said ovules by mistake. So they can never get out of, they can never run out of this. So out of this 60 to 80,000, they are only going to use around 250, not more than that in any case. Is it clear? Nifa and Atif?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's. I think Zaid is also joining in today. Okay. Then we talked about this part. I will repeat for you because it's important, and pay attention here, Hanifa. In the last class, we did about regulation of reproduction system in females, which is not very, very different from the regulation of male reproductive system. Okay. Hypothalamus is the same thing. So hypothalamus releases GnRH, which is gonadotropin releasing hormone, which goes and acts on pituitary and tells the pituitary to secrete LH and FSH. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
When LH and FSH is secreted, then this goes to ovary. In the case of males, it was going to testes. Here it goes to ovary. And ovary is a dual gland, which means it does two things. One, it starts maturing the oocytes. So oocyte maturation begins. Here we will not use the word oogenesis. Can you tell me why we are not using the word oogenesis? Because it has already happened. The oocyte is there in the form of a primary oocyte, right? Arrested. So it will start maturing from where it was arrested during the embryonic stage. So from birth to puberty, the ovary just waits. It stays silent and it is just waiting for the right time to come so that it can again start maturing the oocytes which are present already. Okay. So first thing that happens is oocyte maturation, and second thing is secretion of hormones. So it secretes two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, right? And these two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are responsible for the secondary sexual character, which we studied above, just like it is in males. So in males, it is testosterone. In females, it is estrogen. But estrogen and progesterone also go and act on the uterus. Uterus is another organ which is important in female reproductive cycle, which is the womb, like potential womb after the pregnancy. This holds the baby. So basically in female cycles, the complexity lies here, that in males, there was just one thing, testes, which was undergoing a cycle called spermatogenesis, right? It was making gametes, and other things were the secondary sexual characters. Here in females, there are two things happening. One is the ovarian cycle, which is the ovary, where it produces oocytes. And second is the uterine cycle. Is it clear? So there are two cycles happening at the same time, simultaneously, and we have to study both. So we'll be studying both one by one, and then we will see the broader picture by studying them simultaneously. Okay. Is it clear till here to everyone?
Yes, sir.
And then the last class, Hanifa, we also discussed certain questions that has come in previous years in the NEET. So one question was this. So I will come back to questions later on. Okay, Hanifa? And in today's class also, we'll try to do some questions. So let's move forward from here. And let's start with the primary organ, which is important in females. Write down the primary sexual organ. In female. What is it? Ovaries. So let's study ovary. Okay, some basic things you already know. It is a dual gland. It produces oocytes. So I'm not going to talk about that. Okay. So write down. And it is pair in one pair. It is present as a pair. So there are two ovaries, just like two testes were there. So all these are basic knowledge, you know about it, right? So write down ovaries are located in. So this location question is important because there also where were testes located? Outside the body, right? In scrotal sac.
Yes, sir.
Because spermatogenesis require lower body temperature. Oogenesis does not require lower body temperature because oogenesis is not happening here. Only maturation of oocytes is happening. Okay, oocytes have already been formed in during embryonic stage. So write down, ovaries are present or located in shallow depressions. Depression is like a small pit, a small hole in the tissue. So there is a small pit in which ovaries are present, okay, in the lower abdomen, and this shallow depression is known as ovarian fossa. So ovarian fossa has been asked in one of the NEET years questions, so you can make a star here. This is a question that has been asked. What is ovarian fossa? So it is the shallow depression in which the ovaries are located, and when it's plural, it's called fossae. Okay.
Yes.
Now, important thing is about the histology. What is the meaning of logy?
Study.
And what is histology? Any idea? What is morphology?
The body
Study of the
structure.
physical characteristics of an organism.
Yes. And what is histology is, write down, the study of tissues or microscopic structures. So basically, when you are studying the tissue in detail, so whenever you have to study tissue, you have to study it in microscopes, right? Because from outside, you will not be able to see everything which is present in the tissue. So histology is the study of tissue in greater detail under the microscope. And the word histo comes for tissue. The word myo comes for muscles. If it was myology, it was study of muscles. If it was cytology, it was study of cytology. You know this.
Cells.
Cells, right? Histology, tissues. So write down, the first important thing is about ovary. So ovary, let's try to draw a ovary. If you draw an ovary, it's like, so the outermost layer, okay, of any organ serves the purpose of protection. Okay. So write down the outermost layer. And what do we call the outermost layer of anything? What is the outermost layer of our skin called? Epidermis? Yes, Atif.
Nothing.
It's called epidermis, right? Because it's dermal, it's outer layer. When it is inside, the outer layer of any organ is not dry. It has to be wet, right? So it's called epithelium. So this outer layer of the ovary is called germinal epithelium. Okay, you understood epithelium and epidermis, the difference between the two?
Yes, sir.
Write down, it covers the surface of the ovary. Covers the surface of the ovary. Now, beneath this, the germinal epithelium, there is another layer. Remember what was the layer surrounding the testes? Because these organs are same. So what was the layer which surrounds the testes? The outermost layer. What was the name? Tunica Albuginea. Remember? Did I tell you this? Say yes or no? You don't remember, right? Please go back and revise. So the below the germinal epithelium, there is this layer which is called Tunica Albuginea. It is present in both testes and ovaries. And this is the dense protective covering. So write down, Tunica Albuginea is a whitish tissue capsule. Whitish tissue capsule. So it is tissue, proper tissue. And it is, remember in your lower classes, you must have studied different types of tissues in human body, right? Dense connective tissue, cardiac tissue, muscular tissue, epithelial tissue. Remember studying that, Hanifa?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Sir.
So Tunica Albuginea is a dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue. So it is also a question, a neat question. Tunica albuginea is not an epithelium. It is not a layer. It is not. So in epithelial tissues, you must have read that there are squamous epithelial, columnar epithelium, right? Cuboidal epithelium. Yes. So this is epithelium. But Tunica albuginea is a dense connective tissue. And in dense also there are two types, regular and irregular. Remember? I don't know if NCERT goes in that detail or not, but it's good to know that they are. But this is an NCERT. This has been asked, dense connective tissue. And in the dense category, it is dense irregular. If it is asked, just know that. So write down, it is a whitish tissue layer or tissue capsule which protects the ovary. Then in any organ, you remember class 11 studying about adrenal gland in chemical control and coordination? Adrenal
Yes, sir.
gland. And where is adrenal gland present, Atif? Just as a, the name tells where it is present. Adrenal. The word renal is used for, write it down in your terminology section if you do not know. What is renal means? Renalitis.
Is there something to kidneys?
Yes, perfect. Renal means kidneys. Okay. So if the gland is adrenal, where it is present? Is it coming back to you?
On the kidneys.
On the top of kidney. So remember, they sit like a cap on the kidneys. So if this is your
Yes.
kidney, if you remember your, then on the top of it, this gland sits like this, yellowish gland, right? This is the adrenal gland. Remembering it back, both of you, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. So adrenal gland is on the top, it adds on the renal. So that's why it's called adrenal. And adrenal gland had two parts, the cortex, which produces another hormones, and the inside is called medulla. So in every organ, if there are regions, like you can divide them between layers, then the outermost layer, which is towards the boundary, is always known as cortex. So kidneys, ovaries are also divided into two parts. This part is called ovarian cortex. The same is true for brain. You know about cerebral cortex, which is on the top, cortex. And then the medulla part is towards the bottom, inside. Yes? Remember or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So
Yes, sir.
ovarian cortex, and this is called ovarian medulla. Okay. All the maturation of oocyte, formation of oocyte happen in ovarian cortex. So write it down. This is the site of oogenesis. And also follicle maturation. So all happens in ovarian cortex. So what happens in the medulla? So first write in cortex, ovarian cortex. Ovarian cortex is the outer region that contains, ovarian cortex is the outer region that contains ovarian follicles. Ovarian follicles. Okay. So if all the function, everything is happening in this region, what is medulla doing? Any idea? if it is not the site for fertilization, oogenesis, then it provides to the ovary, right? So ovarian medulla contains all the blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, everything that will bring blood and nutrients and hormones to the ovary. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So write down ovarian medulla. It is deep to the cortex, deep like inside. You can write it is inside to the cortex, which means it is the inner layer, and it contains blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. So basically this inner region is responsible for transporting nutrients and important things towards the ovary. I hope you both are aware and you know about lymphatic system and blood vascular system. Lymph, you have studied lymph, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good. Please go and revise these things because they are recurring things which will always come. So ovarian medulla is done. Now write down, what do we mean by what are ovarian follicles? So we talk about follicle maturation. So in this region, let me tell you what happens. So basically there is a primary follicle, okay, which is small and it has one layer which contains inside, it contains the oocyte. So this is the first stage where it is known as primary follicle. Follicle is simply like a wrapper. So imagine a chocolate candy and that chocolate candy is wrapped in a wrapper, right? So that wrapper actually protects the candy inside. Yes or no?
Yes,
but
sir.
but unlike in the case of a candy where the wrapper is a waste, here the wrapper is not a waste. So what, it's a layer. Follicle is a layer around the oocyte. So when it is primary follicle, it contains inside it the primary oocyte. Okay, is it clear? Then over time, as the cycle progresses, this starts moving ahead, and from primary it develops into secondary follicle. So secondary follicle is nothing but additional layers of, so this was primary follicle, secondary has additional layers. Okay, so this is called secondary follicle. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now secondary follicle also contains primary oocyte only. So the oocyte is not yet secondary, because remember, secondary oocyte is released out. So we will study ovulation in detail, where I will tell you that secondary oocyte comes out. So in secondary follicle also there is primary oocyte. So first the follicles are developing. That is why I wrote here that it is the site for oogenesis and follicle maturation. So follicle starts maturing, and when this grows, so it has a secondary oocyte plus a cavity, a fluid filled cavity, and this follicle, which is now mature and has multiple layers, is called tertiary follicle. Is it clear? This is the most mature form of follicle, known as tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle is the word in NCERT and which will be asked in entrance. But remember, it is the tertiary follicle, and inside it is present your secondary oocyte and a fluid filled cavity known as antrum. Is it clear, Hanif and Atif?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So antrum is a fluid filled cavity inside the Graafian follicle. Now what happens, this Graafian follicles, when it still progresses, it fuses with the membrane. Okay, and it bursts. So the membrane bursts and the secondary oocyte is released out. Okay. So to release the secondary oocyte out, this Graafian follicle, so this is the wall, let's say this is the wall of the ovary, and this is a follicle moving inside. So it will go and it will merge with the wall of the ovary and will burst. So when it will burst, this part will just open, like it will just go away and it will open, and whatever was inside will be released out. Do you understand? Imagine it as a fluid dynamic model. Can you imagine a bubble? Have you seen two bubbles meeting together and then fusing and becoming one bubble?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Something like that. Okay, so it fuses with the wall and allows the oocyte to go out. Now it is not damaging the wall because that will again be repaired, and this Graafian follicle, this tertiary part, after it has released the secondary oocyte. So now this secondary oocyte which is released, after that this left part starts to, just one second, let me connect my, yes, perfect. Just what? Why? Am I audible and visible, Atif?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, okay. I just lost the connection. Okay. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, let me share the screen again. So sorry for the inconvenience caused. Okay, so what was I saying? Yes, after, just 1 second. Yes. So I was saying that after this tertiary follicle, which is the Graafian follicle, when it releases the oocyte, this part, this wrapper, remember I told you the wrapper here is not a waste, right? So it starts to shrink, okay, and form a scar-like structure, which is known as corpus luteum. And it is a very important thing about which we have to study, corpus luteum. It is the degenerating Graafian follicle. Is it clear? And it also has a function. It also has an important function. And when it completely reaches towards, so it has something yellowish inside it as a scar. And when it completely starts to degenerate, I'll use the black again. It is known as, when it is very small and it's degenerating, it's known as Corpus Albicans. Okay. So starting from primary follicle, which contains primary oocyte, then secondary follicle, which contains still the primary oocyte, then it starts developing. And by the time it becomes tertiary follicle or Graafian follicle, it has the secondary oocyte in it, which will be released. So secondary oocyte comes out. Okay. And then the remaining part becomes corpus luteum, a very important structure. We will study why. And if when the corpus luteum degenerates and dies, it is called corpus albicans, the dying corpus luteum. Is this whole thing clear to you, both of you?
Yes, please.
The structure, the histology of ovary is clear to you? So you have written till ovarian medulla. Write down ovarian follicle. A mature ovarian follicle is called Graafian follicle. A mature ovarian follicle is known as Graafian follicle, which contains a secondary oocyte ready to be released, a secondary oocyte ready to be released during the process of ovulation. During the process, in a, what did I say? During the process or in a process? Atif, can you repeat the last line? Am I audible, Atif? I don't know if I'm audible or not. Okay. Hanifa, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So what was the last line that I dictated?
Graafian follicle, which contains a secondary oocyte ready to be released.
Yes, ready to be released during ovulation. So secondary oocyte releases during ovulation. So this process of release is known as ovulation. And then write down, it also contains fluid filled cavity. It also contains a fluid filled cavity known as antrum. Known as antrum. Okay. Next, write down corpus luteum. Corpus luteum. And can you see that I have marked it with yellow here? I have marked corpus luteum as yellow. Can you see this? It is because corpus luteum is also known as yellow body. Okay. And it's yellow because of a protein which is called the lutein protein. That's where the name comes from. Corpus luteum. So you can write down corpus luteum is also known as yellow body because of the presence of lutein protein, which gives it a yellow color. Okay. It contains corpus luteum contains the remnants, the leftover part, the remnants of Graafian follicle, the remnants of Graafian follicle.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, Atif, I can hear you. Tell me.
Yes, sir. I had some technical problems. Can you repeat?
Yes, please. What do you want me to repeat? Tell me. From which stage?
From the corpus luteum. So
Corpus luteum. Okay, so you wrote that the release is called ovulation, and then we went to corpus luteum, right?
yes, sir.
So write down corpus luteum is also known as yellow body. That's why I have made it yellow here. Can you see the yellow color? It looks like a yellow
Yes, sir.
scar because of its. It looks like a yellow scar and also known as yellow body because of the lutein protein. So this protein, which is lutein, from where the name comes, corpus luteum, gives it the yellow color. Okay, so it's known as yellow body because of the presence of lutein protein. And the next thing I said was that it contains corpus luteum contains the remnants of Graafian follicles, because the Graafian follicle is just dying now, right? But it is a very important structure before it dies, because this corpus luteum can secrete, write down, it secretes or it produces basically all the hormones which are important for pregnancy. Now this is the wonderful thing. So corpus luteum produces progesterone. And what does progesterone do? We will study the role of estrogen and progesterone both. So it secretes progesterone, estrogen, then inhibin and relaxin. Inhibin and relaxin. But majorly in entrances, then when they ask you about corpus luteum, they are asking because of this hormone. This is the most important, progesterone. So even if you do not remember inhibin and relaxin, it's okay. But do not forget progesterone. That corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Okay. Okay, Atif and Hanifa, is it clear? Yes. So and write down the last line. After that, I will give you time to draw this. The last line, write down. Corpus luteum degenerates into corpus luteums degenerate into a scar tissue. Scar, you know, like a healing wound. A scar tissue called corpus albicans. So that is the death of corpus luteum. Till it is corpus luteum, it is very active and it secretes hormones. So what it is acting like, a dying cell, a dying tissue, group of tissue, isn't it acting like an endocrine gland, an endocrine tissue? Yes?
Yes.
Correct? So this tissue inside the ovary is the tissue which secretes these four hormones. Remember I told you ovary secretes progesterone, estrogen, inhibin, relaxin? Because of,
Yes, sir.
it's because of this tissue. This is the secreting tissue. And the interesting thing is it is dying. So it secretes, and if it stays, then what will happen? We will study about that later. But is this whole cycle clear to you? Please take your time, draw and label everything in your copy. And let me know when it's done. I give you a few minutes. And if you have any doubts, please ask. Any doubts? Hanifa, Atif, Hiba?
No, sir.
Are you done, Hanifa? You're done drawing it and labeling it, or you're doing it?
Okay.
Atif, let me know when you're done, okay? So remember these stages, okay? Where it was a primary follicle, then it became secondary follicle, then it. So I will be using the same knowledge of which we have discussed today again when we will be discussing ovarian cycle. So this is basically what is ovarian cycle, but we have to study it in context with the menstrual cycle, which is the uterine cycle. Okay, so this thing will come up again. Is it done, people?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Hanifa is done. Heba, you can write if you are not able to speak up with your microphone. You can write in the chat box. Okay, good. Atif, we are waiting for you then. You're there, Atif? I hope you're there.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yeah, take your time. Others in the meanwhile can look at it again, look at everything that you have drawn and written. There should be no doubt regarding any word. In the meanwhile, when Atif is drawing, let me ask Hanifa a question. Hanifa, you there? All our organs, all the organs in our body. If I have discussed this with you already, tell me that we have discussed this. How do you think that every organ in our body is in its position? When it does not, so when we are jumping, like vigorously, when you are running, jumping, when you are falling, doing any kind of activity, no organ dislocates from its place, where bones do dislocate, right? Have we discussed this
Yeah.
part?
No.
No,
I
right?
don't know.
You have any idea how do all our organs stay in place all the time?
Maybe because there's a lot of skin coverings and
There's a lot,
bones
but
protecting them.
bones are not present in our abdominal cavity. In fact, where most of our organs are present, there is no bone. Bone is only protecting our the chest cavity, the ribs, which protects the lungs and the heart. Apart from that, all the major organs, liver, pancreas, intestines, stomach, kidneys, ovaries in case of female, uterus, urinary bladder, they are not protected by bones, right? There is no bone there in our abdomen and lower abdomen.
Okay.
Then how do you think they stay in place? Atif, if you're done, you can participate in the discussion.
Yes, sir, done, sir.
Done? How do you think, Atif, everything stays where it is in our body? Just a basic thing. So write down one term, go back and look at it if you are interested. There are something called mesenteries. Mesenteries are tissues which are present between every organ. So every organ is connected to the body wall with mesenteries. So when a surgeon opens the body, if you open a stomach of any human, you will not see a well-labeled diagram like you see in book that, oh, this is liver and this is intestine, this is the, I can see it from outside. No, you have to go, you have to just know where it is present, and you have to go through layers, cutting these mesenteries and then finding the organ. So mesenteries keep everything packed. So our body is not like empty anywhere. These mesenteries connect organs to organs, they connect organs to the body wall, they connect everything inside. That's why the howsoever vigorously you jump or you fall or you do anything, no organ, you know, mislocates from its place. Okay. So you would like to go back and look at mesenteries. It is not a part of your syllabus for NCERT, but it is important thing. When you will be becoming doctors, you will be studying about them a lot. They are both a good thing and a bad thing, because for surgeries, like bad thing, like they are hindrances. Good thing is like if they are not there, then we will not be alive. But it is in itself a proper full-fledged organ. Okay. Is it clear? Hatif, Hanifa, shall we move forward? Okay,
Yes,
good.
sir.
So no doubt in the structure of ovary. Okay, then let me come to the next topic of today, which is another important topic, which is oogenesis. So now we will be studying oogenesis. So before we go to the cycles, we will study everything which is basic and fundamental, basic and important, like important fundamentals, one of which is oogenesis. So write down. Now, before we go into oogenesis, do you remember spermatogenesis, everyone? Atif, Hanifa, do both of you have the notebook, the same notebook where you have noted spermatogenesis? And Hiba also, Hiba? Do you have the notes for spermatogenesis with you right now? Yes, Hanifa?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Hiba, you also have the notes for spermatogenesis, the chart which we made, flow chart, starting from primordial germ cell. Basically, I'm talking about, if I can go up, I have to go a lot up. Yes, I'm talking about this. Everyone has this noted? So please open it and take a look for 2 minutes. Go through just the chart, just from primordial germ cell to sperm. Hanifa, Atif, and Hiba. Are you going through it with me?
Yes, sir.
Good. So there is a primordial germ cell, which when it is inside the testes, when it's enter the gonads, it divides and becomes spermatogonium. It's all mitotic division. Then spermatogonium also divides mitotically and make primary spermatocytes. Okay. And the primary spermatocyte is a 2N structure, which is for the first time, which undergoes meiotic division 1 and makes 2 secondary spermatocytes. And secondary spermatocytes are the first haploid cells in this process, which undergoes meiosis division 2 to make 4 spermatids. And then these spermatids undergo differentiation and maturation, structural maturation. So here what is happening is structural maturation. And we make mature sperms. Okay, clear? Yes, simple, right?
Yes, sir.
Now let's go to oogenesis. And oogenesis is not that simple, because remember when we were studying sexual reproduction in plant, again, biology is all connected. So in plant, there was something called microsporogenesis and megasporogenesis from MMC, megaspore mother cell, and PMC, pollen mother cell. Remember MMC, PMC, microsporogenesis, megasporogenesis? You cannot keep forgetting things that we have done already. Okay, there.
No, sir, I didn't forget.
Okay, you remember, right, Atif?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I told you in megasporogenesis that from one megaspore mother cell, from one MMC, when meiotic division happens, four cells are produced, right? Out of which 3 degenerate and only 1 develops into the embryo sac. Yes. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. In oogenesis, something like that will be happening. Because see, we have to undergo meiosis to make gametes, but there is a catch. There is a difference between how male gametes are formed and how female gametes are formed. Male gametes are always, mostly, they are smaller and then they are required in lots and lots of numbers. For example, sperm, in every ejaculation, how many sperms are there? I told you this. Per ejaculation, there is around 30 million sperms, which is like around 3 crore to 30 crore sperms. Lots of them. Same with pollen grains. When pollen grains are released, there are like thousands and lakhs of pollen grains releasing out. Okay. And only one is required to fertilize. Yes or no? Yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
male gametes can be formed in thousands and like millions of numbers, in fact, but female gametes mostly are very limited in number. In humans, it is just one oocyte that will be released normally under normal physiological conditions from each ovary in alternate months. But the rule of biology is that whenever you are undergoing meiosis, from one cell, how many daughter cells will be formed in meiosis? 4. In mitosis, from one cell, 2 daughter cells are formed after the completion of one mitotic cycle. In meiosis, from one cell, 4 daughter cells are formed after the completion of one meiosis, right? Say yes or no?
Yes, sir.
But do we need 4 oocytes in that month to be released? No, right? We just need 1. So what happens here is, in oogenesis, there are stages. So I will divide, again, starting from primordial germ cell. So this is the cell line which gives rise to both gonads and gametes. So when you are as an embryo, this germ line first forms. Okay. So this is formed, and when it enters the gonads, so inside the gonads, like inside the ovary, in this case, the gonad is ovary. The first, so it starts from here in the ovaries. So the first thing which is formed is oogonia. Remember, it was spermatogonium there. There was a reason I asked you to revise spermatogenesis right in front of my eyes just now. Primordial germ cells there, you can keep the page there, just turn the page and keep comparing. It forms oogonium, right? There it was spermatogonium. And this is a diploid cell. What will be oogonium? What was spermatogonium?
Diploid.
So oogonium also will be diploid cell. And this oogonium, then what will it form? Primary. Yes, primary what? Oocyte. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And what will be the ploidy of this primary oocyte?
Diploid.
Still diploid. Okay, because primary oocyte starts meiosis but does not end even one cycle. It gets arrested in between. Remember? Now
Yes.
comes the catch. From here to here, it is happening during embryonic stage. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
There was no such staging in case of spermatogenesis. Everything is happening after puberty. Here, this is happening during embryonic stage when the female is inside the mother's womb. And then this primary oocyte is the first oocyte. So here, this division, what division is happening here? Mitotic division, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. And primary oocyte will be the first cell, cell
Sir,
line.
one doubt.
Yes, Atif?
Sir, Oogonium will mature into primary oocyte, it will divide to form primary oocyte.
Oogonium will divide to form primary oocyte.
Okay, sir.
There also spermatogonium was dividing to form primary oocyte. Primordial germ cell was also dividing to form oogonium. Do you understand? So
Yes,
here
sir.
also it's mitosis, here also it's mitosis. Is it clear? Any doubt?
No, sir.
So these oogonium or spermatogoniums are actually like the MMCs and the PMCs which we studied in plant. Remember? Pollen mother cell. Yes, right. So after this, the primary oocyte is the first cell line in this process which will commit to meiosis. So meiosis 1 begins but never ends. There are two meiosis. So write down meiosis 1 begins and gets arrested or gets paused, whatever you want to write, gets arrested at prophase 1. If you have studied meiosis in detail, which I ask you to do, you will see that every cycle has, so meiosis 1 and meiosis 2 is there. Inside meiosis also there is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. Remember? A resting phase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. At metaphase, all the DNA is aligned at the center like a plate, a central plate, just before division. Do you know these things or not? Atif, is it clear in your head? So prophase is one phase in meiosis 1. In meiosis 2 also there will be prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2. And so you have to know this from NCERT's point of view. And even in prophase, if they ask you which, so prophase also has different sub stages. So just write it down. Even if you don't remember, it's fine. Diplotin stage of prophase 1. Diplotin stage of prophase 1 of meiosis 1. Is it clear? You have to remember by heart prophase 1 of meiosis 1. So it gets arrested there. And this arrest stays after that. So this is where, at this point, where the birth happens. Right? Birth happens at this stage where it is arrested. Yes or no? And it stays arrested from birth to what? Puberty. So from birth to puberty, it stay arrested. And just at puberty, what starts?
Menstruation.
No, with respect to oocyte, we are not talking about menstruation now. So this arrest, which was there, it starts developing. Just what I told you above. This thing starts happen. Remember, this primary oocyte was arrested, then it becomes primary follicle, then it becomes secondary follicle, and it starts developing. Okay, at puberty, and it becomes secondary oocyte. Can you now connect everything that we are studying? So here at puberty, you write down yes. All right. Further development of primary oocyte starts. And when it happens, what does it becomes now? It becomes from primary to
Secondary.
secondary oocyte. And what will be the ploidy of secondary oocyte?
Haploid.
Yes. Just like sperm, this is the first haploid cell. And also write down M1 completes. So when M1 completes, then only it can become from one primary oocyte. How many secondary oocytes will be formed? 2. Okay.
2.
From one primary spermatocyte, how many secondary spermatocytes were being formed? 2. And then this secondary oocyte will undergo, what will it undergo? It will complete meiosis 2, right?
Yes, sir.
And when it will complete meiosis 2, it will become a mature egg cell. And this mature egg cell is known as ovum. But this is the second, and ovum is also haploid, right? But remember that this thing is released during ovulation. From ovary, which clearly means that this second cycle of meiosis, like not second cycle, but meiosis 2 is happening outside the ovary. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Because if it is already released out, whatever is happening after that is happening outside the ovary, no? So it is happening in the fallopian tube. Is it clear? And
Yes,
this
sir.
was a neat question. So in NCERT, they have not explicitly written this, but they have just told that in ovulation, secondary oocyte is released. So I told you that it talks in one-liners, and it's enough to tell you that it is released out of ovary. So no, it's not inside the ovary. And the question was, meiosis 2 of oogenesis happens in ovary, fallopian tube, uterus, none of the above. And everyone thinks that oogenesis happens in ovary, so they will select and choose ovary, and they will be very happy selecting the wrong answer. But you understand where it happens? Meiosis 2 completes in, yes, Atif.
Nothing, sir. I just said yes, sir.
Yes. So where does it happens? Meiosis 2 happens in, just repeat.
Fallopian tube.
Yes. So write it down. You can just write down as one bullet point. It's an important point. But that's not making sense, because from primary oocyte, 2 secondary oocytes must have been formed, no? Either I put 2 here, which will justify. And then if 2 secondary oocytes are there, then each secondary oocyte will give rise to 2 mature egg cells. So by the end of the cycle, there will be 4 mature egg cells. Yes or no? Because meiosis is happening. Yes?
Yes, sir.
But we still have 1 mature egg cell which is released. What happens? Where it is going wrong? Is it some different kind of a meiosis? No, it is the normal meiosis. But the catch here is that when primary oocyte develops into secondary oocyte, it along with secondary oocyte, when it completes the meiosis 1, there is another thing formed which is known as polar body. Polar body. So it has 2 daughter cells, a polar body and a secondary oocyte. And this is the first polar body of the process of, sorry. Just one moment. Oh, it's very irritating sometimes. So this is the, just one moment. This is the first polar body. Now, what is a polar body? And before I finish this, let me also tell you. Now, the secondary oocyte will also divide and form 2 cells. Again, when it completes meiosis 2, it forms a mature egg and another polar body. Okay. Do you understand, Atif? and this is the second polar body of the cycle. So these polar, what are polar bodies? Write down. Okay, before writing it down, let me give you time. Have you all drawn this whole thing? No, right? You need to draw it. Say yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So let me give you time. So after, so this phase where it is all happening is, sorry, I should not have drawn this, is called reproductive phase. This keeps happening for the rest 40 years. Okay, so first draw it, complete it. I am projecting the first half of the cycle. When you are done, let me know. I will go down.
Sir, ovum is also known as oocyte, right?
What? Ooted? No.
Yes, sir.
What was spermatid?
So
What
yeah,
was-
sir. Before the formation of sperm, it was spermatid.
Yes. So
So
before
then
it
in this
becomes,
stage, it can be called oocyte.
actually secondary oocyte when it is released and before it becomes complete fully mature ovum, in between it is known as ooted. But ooted is not a very good term to use for ovum because ovum does not have to mature like sperms have to. You understand? But
Okay,
still
sir.
that word is used in books. But remember that after it is released from the ovary, it is still a secondary oocyte. It has not completed meiosis 2 of the oogenesis. So in that phase, it stays like a secondary oocyte. It's doing something. When it enters the fallopian tube, one important factor that makes the ovum is the entry of sperm. So sperms come in the picture. All this I will explain later. Sperm comes, but just because you have asked the question, so let me tell you. When sperm touches the ovum, that triggers the ovum to complete meiosis 2 and become a fully fledged ovum. Before that, while it was traveling inside the fallopian tube, people also call it as ooted. You understand? But ooted is nothing but a secondary oocyte only. Yes.
Okay, sir. Clear, sir.
Yeah. So that's why I don't use the word ooted, and I think NCERT also does not uses the word ooted. Is it there in NCERT, Atif? Did you read this in NCERT? Ooted?
Sorry, sir.
Did you read the word in NCERT? Ooted?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll go through it. What does it say about ooted in NCERT? Does it specifically defines it at any stage like this is ooted?
1 minute.
I must be having NCERT with me. Yeah. Reproduction chapter. Yes. Can you tell me the page number, Atif?
One second, check.
Yeah. And in the meanwhile, please, others complete this. I don't think I can search the word ooted, but let me know where it is, okay? I can see oogonia, oocytes, ovum, polar body, but not ootids. I can see spermatids.
So maybe my recalling might be wrong. I'm not sure.
So you must have
But
studied it in some book, yeah, right? Because as far as I know, NCERT does not use the word ootids because they treat ovum before it is ovum as secondary oocyte, and which is the case also. But if you use the word ootids, it is not like it's not also abruptly wrong. It's just like spermatids and sperm, spermatozoa. So ootids and ovum. Okay. But some books do use it. So I was just thinking that because I could not find it anywhere in NCERT. So I don't think it's in NCERT. If you find it in NCERT, please let me know if it is in any question or something. Okay, Atif?
Yes.
Okay. So shall I go down? This is done. Yes. So complete this. Complete the oogenesis chart. Then I will dictate. Let me know when it's done, people. Hanifa, Hiba, Atif, all of you. The process is clear to you, right? It's slightly complicated, but I think once you understand it, it's clear, right? You just have to remove polar bodies so that you can finally get one. And one more thing, and that is not very important for your exam, but conceptually, you must be thinking that this first, when primary oocyte divided, it formed two in meiosis one. So in first cycle, there are two daughter cells. One is polar body, one is secondary oocyte. Then this secondary oocyte underwent division. What happened to this polar body? Do this also goes on to divide further? And the answer is no, because it does not have enough resources to go on and divide. Okay. Technically, whatever are the two daughter cells from meiosis 1, they both should again divide to form 2 each daughter cells. Yes. Technically, biologically, right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? This is how in the end you will form 4 daughter cells. Am I clear, people? Or am I confusing you? Hanifa, do you understand what I just said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So this first polar body stops there. Okay. It does not further divides. So if it is done, tell me. I shall dictate you certain important things now. Is it done? Noting down of the whole cycle.
Yes.
Yes. Atif and Hiba.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hiba.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Perfect. So now write down the process of ovulation. So this part where secondary oocyte is released, the process of ovulation each month after puberty, is triggered by what triggers ovulation? Okay, is triggered by the pituitary hormones FSH and LH. The pituitary hormones FSH and LH. Is it clear?
Yes.
So FSH and LH triggers ovulation. So when their level rises, ovulation takes place. Okay, when their level decreases, there is no ovulation happening. And now write about polar body, write down. When primary oocyte completes meiosis 1, when primary oocyte completes meiosis 1, to produce a secondary oocyte, it also produces the first polar body. It also produces the first polar body. Now write down, polar body is a small, it is very small. So first write down a small haploid cell which do not have much of cytoplasm and cannot fertilize an ovum It only contains cannot fertilize an ovum. It only contains the haploid copy of the genome in it. Okay. So it contains a nucleus, but it do not contain cytoplasm. So what is happening here is, you can understand now what is happening, right? This meiosis 1 completes and the division is unequal. Unequal in terms of size. In terms of genome, it is equal. So one copies goes, polar body is also haploid. So you can write here. So one copy goes here and one copy goes here. Make sense? Hanifa, Hiba and Atif?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
But
sir.
because this is going to be a waste, this we already are sacrificing. We do not need 2 ovums. So we convert it into a polar body. It is a very small restricted cell. Secondary oocyte is large, very large. Polar body is just the nucleus with membrane and very little cytoplasm. So the division is unequal in size. So this polar body is not able to do anything after that and it gets degraded. Similarly, when meiosis 2 completes, here also the division is unequal in size. So it is meiosis only, but the different thing in this meiosis is that all the divisions are unequal in size. Is it clear? Again, a polar body is formed containing half of the genome. Okay. And remember, meiosis 2 is just like mitosis. Yes. So before this division happened, secondary oocyte's DNA copy got double. So this N became 2N and then divided N into a polar body and another N into a mature egg cell. Again, this has just the nucleus and a very small amount of cytoplasm, unable to do or fertilize the mature. So this way, by dividing unequally in size and by not dividing all the resources properly, we are just dividing the nucleus properly, because that has to be done to make gamete. But we are not giving anything else to the polar body. Is it clear? All of you?
Yes.
The whole process, no doubt.
No, sir.
No, sir, no.
No? Okay. So one thing I want to convey to all of you is that from the coming week, we are planning to make your classes 2 hours long. Not today, but like you will be notified. And as I told you in the last class, we will be incorporating a section where we will be dedicating time to questions which have come in NEET previous year's questions. Okay. So be ready for it. Okay, everyone, just let you know. So let's stop the class here on Oogenesis. In the next class, I'm giving you a homework. So because you'll be meeting me after a few days of gap now. So write down your in-class homework. All these were the foundational bases to understand 2 cycles. So you have to read from NCERT the ovarian cycle plus hormones which are important in that cycle, and the uterine cycle, uterus basically. This cycle is called menstrual cycle, plus the hormones which are important there and their roles. This we will take up in the next class when you meet me next week.
So this ovarian cycle, the one is it the one with the primary follicle becomes secondary follicle? That one?
Yes, the primary follicle, starting from the primary follicle, you reach till the stage where you release the ovum, and even after that, corpus luteum and corpus albicans, which I have shown you in a diagram just above. That is the ovarian cycle, and uterine cycle is the menstrual cycle. Okay, so come prepared. See you in the next class, everyone. Bye bye. Take care. Stay blessed.